And one of the people took him to court, and the judge said, "How many of these have you done?" And the guy said, 46. And he said, "I want to see the paperwork on every one of them."
Mm.
And he unwound every deal that guy had done, made
Oh boy.
him give money back and just do all kind of stuff.
Welcome back to another Real Estate Note Show. I'm your host, Dave Putz. As always, my co-partner, Nathan Turner. How are you, my man?
I'm doing well. Doing well.
Oh, fun times. I had some good calls recently, some sharing
Yeah.
of stories, and some really interesting stuff coming out of the seller finance world. I talked to someone the other day who is creating 5 or 6 notes a month, and he's trying to
Wow.
charge it
Nice.
up. And he's doing
Yeah.
it by fix and flipping property and then selling that once it's selling on terms. And we're just going over some
Perfect.
numbers and what works, what doesn't work. How can we improve him? What can we
Yeah.
do when we're sharing what it looks like, right? And that kind of stuff's
Yeah.
interesting. And we learned some new vocabulary as we talked. That was one thing you and I talk about on the show all the time. Is the vocabulary us note buyers use is often different than
Yeah,
what those
it
the seller
is.
finance world is.
We didn't realize that when we started talking to some of the seller finance folks. And we just had who was that the other day, and they're like, "Well, actually, it's owner finance." That was Bond. He's saying, "Actually, we call that owner finance." Oh, yeah, okay, I guess that makes sense. But to us, it's one and the same: owner
Yeah,
finance, seller finance, whatever.
yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah, just learning terminology, learning how they're doing it, so that we can work together
Yep.
and get some deals done, and really come together on
I
what's
think
going on.
Paul and also we had our show 2 shows ago, and he told me he didn't know what UPB was, and I said, "It's
Yeah,
unpaid balance." He said, "Well, it's loan balance." Oh, and so it's just
yeah,
vocabulary, and it's weird how some people it's all creative financing. Well, creative financing, seller financing, owner finance are the same thing. You want to call it creative, just little terms
yeah,
that we often use. So it's
yeah.
interesting that we have vocabulary that we understand is meaning the same stuff, but in different sectors of the seller finance world, it's different.
Yeah, really interesting. And this is something that we talked about briefly a little while ago is I'm finding it interesting that the seller finance people don't have the same kind of community that note people do.
Yes.
And I thought that's fascinating. I never even
Yeah.
considered that before. They
Yeah.
don't have the same kind of like they don't get together, they
Nope.
don't, do things. So
Unless there's one
let's
guru
change
teaching
that.
it, right? There's a guru that
Yeah.
teaches their tribe. There's
Yeah.
like the tribes don't interact, which is interesting to
Right.
hear because we have different quote unquote gurus in our space and they all interact with each other. We have to.
Yeah. We all
Yeah.
get together.
Yeah.
But so I'm hoping that we can maybe help to change that a little bit. Get everybody come out to
Yes.
DME, meet
Yes.
each other, learn what other people are doing. Maybe you can learn something from somebody that's doing something similar to you, but they've got some other, whatever tips and tricks that you don't know about. That's how business is done, Like if
Yeah.
we share and share alike, there's lots and lots of business out there. There's no reason not to share that kind of
Yeah.
thing.
Yep.
And then you can start transacting with each other. What an awesome thing to be able to do and selling notes to us.
Yeah. And before we introduce our guests, I wanted to bring back our little story. How was our situation in Chicago? How was our Chicago situation?
All right. So last week it wasn't actually Chicago. I'm heading out
Oh, that's
tomorrow
right.
for that.
That's
So
right.
last week it was really interesting. I was at and it was an IMN conference for mortgage and AI,
Okay.
which was really interesting and really great to learn some of those insights and things. And I'm actually going to be sending out an email later with kind of my takeaways and things that I've learned. So stay tuned and watch for that because it really, really interesting. I really enjoyed that. It was good conference.
Yeah. So Chicago, you're flying out tomorrow for it.
We
Hopefully
start the criminal
eviction.
trial.
Evicting a tenant in Chicago, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, 6 years later, feels like it's forever later. So
Not even a tenant. This is a squatter from day one. She's been a squatter. Her and her husband literally never had the right to be in the home. 5 years on, still in the house. Been evicted and then broke back into the house. Been removed by police twice. Broke back into the house twice. Like it has just been an absolute gong show. Once it's all over, I'm gonna write this one all up and we'll do a full
yeah.
case study. But this has been just an
Oh,
absolutely amazing, just a fascinating study in
yeah.
what's going wrong
Yeah.
and mistakes that I've made as
Yep.
well. Like I don't pass
Yep.
the buck
No, no, we all can learn.
completely. Things I could have done better as well. But
Yeah.
anyway,
Stay out of Cook County next time, right?
yeah,
So
exactly. There's
let's
step one.
let's shift gears here because seller financing, we've been on a mission for a couple of years now to really understand seller financing, how they do it, what they focus on, what makes their situation work for them, how can we help them, but also how can they help us? And the only way that me and Nathan learn is by talking to people who are experts in the space. And to network with experts allows us to kind of just jump the line of education and truly dive into the understanding the brain of what they're doing, how they're doing it, what they're focusing on, so we can be better investors, better no buyers, and raise capital to do this stuff. As I'm sure you know, Nathan has a fund, and allow him to buy more stuff, allow us to buy more stuff. So let's cut the chase and bring our guest, William Tingle. How are you, my man? Where are you calling out of? What's going on today?
Well, I'm fantastic, Dave. Nathan, thanks for having me. Calling from Northwest Arkansas. We've been here for about 3 years. So yeah,
fantastic,
awesome. So I know you're not new in the space, right? I love the science in the background. Tell us a little bit of how you got into real estate. We all started there, I'm sure. Tell us the story.
Yeah, well, it's a long story, but I'll give you the short version. I quit school in ninth grade and ran away from home and was on my own until I was 18, of course, and didn't have to hide out from the cops anymore. But so I didn't have a lot of choices. I didn't have a high school education, didn't have a college degree, but I was a hustler. So I got into the restaurant business because that's anybody can get in the restaurant business, and I worked hard. So 20 years later, I found myself being the director of operations for 3 states for a fast food chain. Wow. And I made okay money. This was 1999. I was making about 70 grand a year, pretty dang good for somebody with a ninth grade education. But I worked 70 hours a week. I drove over 3 states all the time. I never saw my wife or kids. And I was just miserable. And, we lived like most people do. We spent everything we made. We charged Christmas presents up at the end of the year, paid them off with the tax refund, and, just lived that way. But I was miserable. And one night, I had a manager quit and I had to go run the store while I found a new manager. And I was in the hotel room one night and I couldn't sleep and flipping channels, and a Carlton Sheets infomercial was playing. No money down real estate. And I said, well, gosh, there's got to be something better than this. So I ordered it. And when it came, UPS brought it a couple of weeks later. And I actually took the cellophane off the manuals and I read them. And I did what he said to do, which at the time before social media was calling FSBO ads in the paper. And that's tough.
Real quick, FSBO is for sale by owners, for those who may not know.
For sale by owner, that's right. Yeah. And so people paying for an ad, but too cheap to pay a realtor. And I just started dialing. Every spare minute I had, I was calling people and talking to them. And 30 days later, I bought my first house. And then another 30 days, bought a second house and a third and a fourth. And I said, well, gee, this might really work. So I said, I want to quit my job in a year. And I did the numbers and we downsized a little bit. And I said, I need to buy about 25 houses to quit my job. And a year later, I bought 24 and I quit my job. And I've been a full-time investor ever since.
Nice.
What year do you think this was?
I bought my first house in June of 1999. So I've been doing this for over 26 years.
Well,
wow. That's awesome.
High five. So guys, I'm sure you're listening in and watching on YouTube. So this guy's been around for a little while, right? This is not a fly on the wall. This is not a fly by night kind of person. He has some battle wounds, right?
Been through a couple cycles. Yep.
Right? So
fantastic.
One of the things we find, William, is there's a lot of people getting into space in the last 5 years, especially seller finance people who are doing wraps and stuff like that, that all they've seen is success in the last 5 years, where payments are continuously going on and working out. What do you say to those kind of people where, yeah, last 5 years has been great for performing notes, but don't bank on that being performing forever? What do you say to those kind of people?
Well, my first 10 years, I did a little bit of everything. I was a rehabber, a wholesaler. I sold houses on lease options. I sold them with seller financing. You have to plan for the bad times in what we do and in pretty much everything. I think one of the biggest mistakes I see investors make now is Okay, like let's take this deal. We bought this deal about 7 weeks ago. We just got a contract last week. Our buyer side, they're giving us 50,000 down, which is a great down payment on a $300,000 house. Now, a lot of these new guys, they'll take that 50,000 and they'll go blow it on everything under the sun. So the first payment that the new homeowner misses, they got to come out of pocket. If they don't have the money, they can't. So you need to take about a third of that down payment, if not more, and put that aside for the day when Sally doesn't make her house payment. That's how you stay in business. Yeah. So you can't blow all your money.
Plan ahead.
Got to plan
like
for the bad times.
So it sounds to me your focus in the note space is, are you doing fix and flip sell in terms? Are you doing sub 2 reps? What are you focusing on the note space?
As far as creating notes, that's a pretty cookie cutter process for us. We buy subject to, we sell with seller financing. We don't wrap. We don't do a true wrap. We do a contract for deed.
Yeah.
And for those who don't know the difference, what is it between contract for deed and doing a typical security instrument?
Yeah.
Well, if I give my buyer legal title, it really limits me on some options should they default and some other things. This deal I just talked about, for example, why would anybody do it? But this guy handed us the keys. He wasn't behind on payments. He owed $214. We sold the house for $300 and what it was worth. He just had a life situation. He wanted out. He wanted certainty. So even though we're getting 50,000 down, we still have another $35,000, $40,000 of equity in this property. Now, let's just say something happens and I need some cash. If I sell on a wrap, my buyer has legal title. My equity's tied up in this property. If I sell it on a land contract, I'm free to refinance or do other things, whatever I may want to do. Secondly, selling on a wrap, my property is subject to liens and judgments with my new buyer. If I sell on a land contract, we hold title in a trust, by the way. If I sell it on a land contract, my new buyer can't get liens or judgments attached to the property. So if they decide to default or move out or give the house back, which happens, I don't have to foreclose to clean up the title. So it's just easier for everybody.
That's beyond a ninth grade education. That's school of hard knocks. That's learning.
Yeah. Well, I've been doing it for a little bit, but
When did you start doing wrap notes? Not wrap, but doing the sub 2 world. Was that the beginning? When did that come out in your business?
I'll tell you, I learned about sub 2 pretty early because, I'm pretty analytical. So when I said I want real estate investing to replace job income, I want to get out of my job. And I learned early on, even though I have good credit, I didn't have a lot of money. But if I depend on the banks to finance all of my properties, they're going to cut me off somewhere down the road. And the numbers vary depending on who you ask. But it seemed like the number I kept hearing was 10 to 20. The banks would go, well, we got a lot of exposure with you, which is just a fancy way of saying, it's a lot of money. So I said, well, I can't lead the lifestyle I want to lead on 20 houses. So I got to find another way. And I was this was before social media and Zoom. I was in a chat room one night talking to some guys and they were talking about subject to. And I said, well, what's that? And he said, well, you'll own the property and the seller will stay responsible for the loan. And I said, man, that's some kind of crazy talk. Nobody's going to do that. But the next seller that called me that sounded motivated, I decided to try to pitch it to him. And he said, yeah, what do I need to do? It sounds great. So I said, well, maybe this will work. So I learned about sub 2 way back, and that just seemed to be the right fit for seller financing. I didn't have to qualify for this loan. I could buy as many as I wanted. If I wanted to buy 10 a month and I did enough marketing, I could do it. So that's what I chose to be my vehicle. Now, we still will do a rehab if the right situation presents itself. I'll still flip a house, but buying subject to, selling with seller financing, that's our real cookie cutter thing. And we like to do 10 or 15 of those.
What is the typical reason? Because it's amazing to hear that so many sellers will give you a house, let you take over the payments, and there's equity. They can just sell the house.
Yeah. especially in the market we're in up here, they absolutely could. But, it's varied things. And I shared a list recently of my last few sellers and what their motivation was. It's not always financial. Sure, some are in foreclosure, but sometimes it's a divorce. Sometimes it's a relocation for a job. Heck, we had a lady give us a house last year because she had to move from here to Little Rock for a liver transplant, and she was on the liver transplant list. But when you're on that list, you have to be able to report to the hospital within an hour of the call.
Right.
And we're 4 hours away. So she had to relocate. So she gave us a house subject to this lady had an 800 credit score. She had already qualified for a new home in Little Rock. But she checked us out really good. She deeded us the house. We wrote her a check for 30,000. We spent another 35 or 40 on it, fixing it up. And we sold it and made $70,000 after realtor fees and cost and everything else.
Fantastic.
Different situations, man.
Life happens, doesn't it? Like, life is a funny thing, and like you say, it's not always financial. People's motivations are not. I mean, as kind of logical as it seems, is not always tied to money. There's other life situations, things that happen, things that come up that you got to deal with.
Absolutely. The deal we referenced earlier, the one we just bought a few weeks ago, that he was from Hot Springs, which is a couple hours from here. His dad had recently died, and he realized he was up here single. He never saw his family very much, and it just reprioritized things for him. He said, I want to move back home, and I want to move right now. He made the payment going out the door. He was not behind. He owed about 65% of the value of the house, but he handed us the keys and he moved. And he was happy to do it.
It's amazing. We all say that's not possible. That story sounds fake, right? And the answer is,
well,
then keep thinking that, because William going to keep making money doing it, right? It doesn't matter what we think is right or wrong. Stats show different.
Here's the file on the buy side and the new file on the sell side with sales contract. I mean, it's real, man. I've been doing it for 26 years. I've been living it. I used to go to when I lived in Georgia, I would go to the local realtors meetings. And I remember sitting in there one time telling some of my stories, and this guy turned around. He'd been listening but wasn't in the conversation. He turned around and he said, "You've got to be making this stuff up." And I said, "Man, there's no way. I don't have the imagination to make this stuff up." It happens every day.
What are some of the biggest mistakes that you've learned from and do differently today because of those mistakes?
Well, the primary one is the myth that if you sell a property on lease option, most of the people do all the maintenance, take care of the house, and eventually cash you out. That's taught a lot, and I believed it in the beginning until I did a couple of hundred lease options. And now I know that actually about 5 to 10% of those people are going to do any maintenance or cash you out on that deal. And in fact, when you get that house back, you're going to learn a new real estate term called deferred maintenance. Because I'll tell you, some of this stuff that's taught out there, especially today, man, it's just crazy.
Yeah.
My grandfather was a carpenter, and he always said, measure twice and cut once. And if you think everything's going to work out like YouTube University says, you're going to be in for a sad awakening. I'm afraid.
That's
real.
I had some of those as well. Absolutely. And it sounds good. Again, if you're listening to the gurus and you hear all the best case scenarios, oh yeah, they're going to take care of the house, they're going to fix it up. And then even if they do default down the road, no problem. Now it's all improved. That doesn't happen. It just doesn't.
And I'll tell you, in some of this stuff, when you go before a judge and they're going to look at you and look at your contract and say, I don't know about all this. In fact, I told you I was at that event this weekend. Randy shared a lease option story. Of course, it's out of California, and everything goes cattywampus out in California. But this guy did options where he would buy an option on a property and do some shenanigans. And one of the people took him to court, and the judge said, "How many of these have you done?" And the guy said, 46. And he said, "I want to see the paperwork on every one of them." And he unwound every deal that guy had done, made him give money back and just do all kind of stuff. It bankrupted the dude. So, I mean, you better be very selective on who you listen to. out
Yeah.
there and the stuff you're doing, because if
If
it doesn't pass the sniff test.
if you guys are watching or listening on YouTube or a podcast, rewind the last 30 seconds and re-listen to what he just said.
Listen
Right?
to that again and again.
Because in the last 6 years, me and Nathan have seen way too much crap, if not daily, definitely weekly, of these collateral files that, and William, correct me if I'm wrong, if nothing goes wrong, they pay forever, you're never going to have a problem. When they
Well,
default, that's when crap happens.
well, if so, problems come from surprising areas
Okay.
sometimes. You can do everything right and still have a problem. It just depends. That's one of the things we discussed at this event this weekend. We were talking about doing things the right way, and how years ago judges ruled on the law, but today they rule on feelings a lot of times. A lot of judges make law from the bench. And then it's up to you to appeal it or fight it. And what do appeals mean? What does fighting mean? That means paying attorneys, other stuff. I like this is I'm telling you, it's not enough just to do things right. You've got to go over and above that. And that's one reason why, if I sell a house to Sally and she pays me flawlessly for 5 years and something happens and she quits paying, I'm not going to hire an attorney and go over there thumping my chest. I'm going to, Danny DeVito told Michael Douglas this in War of the Roses during his divorce. He said, give to the point of night sweats. I'm going to go over there and I'm going to be nice with Sally. And if I need to, I'm going to give her part of her down payment back. I'm going to work with her to make our parting as easy as possible, because anytime you have to pay an attorney, you've already lost. So you've got to go above and beyond, I believe. And you've got to really try to work with the people that you're working with.
So you've got all these people with their life situations. Where do they come from? How, are you finding them, or are they finding you?
You mean my sellers?
Yeah.
We do a couple of different things. I'm lazy. I'm old. I'm in my 60s now, so I like to take it easy. I used to do a bunch of different types of marketing, but now I'm all about efficiency. And we do two forms of marketing right now. We run radio where we are. We negotiated a really good rate, and we're on the stations. It establishes credibility. People call us off-market deals we wouldn't know about any other way. And the second thing we do is door knock people in foreclosure. We actually knock on the door. And when they answer the door, I say, hey, is Bob home? Hey, I'm Bob. And I go, Bob, my name's William. I understand the bank's trying to take your home, and I wanted to see if there's anything I can do to help. And the first thing we try to do, if they want to keep their house, is we talk to the lender. We try to work out, homeowners aren't familiar with loan mods and forbearances and all those terms. And we help many people keep their house. We do that no charge. We walk away. They're happy. They're still in their house. If their circumstances won't allow that, if they don't want to keep their house, then we talk to them about buying it. So that's the two ways that we buy houses.
Very good. Very good.
That's definitely old school. I don't know if I've run anyone recently that's doing door knocks, right? Even us note buyers even us note buyers, I don't think we do them anymore. I did them when we first began, but I don't do door knocks anymore. My door knocks, a letter in the mail from the attorney. That's about it, right? So,
yeah. Well, it's effective because nobody does it. And, we live in the age now, everybody wants to text. Maybe they'll drop a card in the mail, but we knock on the door and we actually have a conversation with people.
What is your, typical is a bad word for it, but what is your typical, is your sellers, is your typical age? Is there any kind of common factor that you've seen that may not be the most common factor? Is there a factor? Is it age? Is it economics? What is the main reason for having to give up the property?
If you're talking about foreclosure, it's generally just poor money management or the economy. With just sellers in general, man, it is so many things. We had a lady 2 years ago, actually. I'll always remember this deal because it was the biggest wholesale deal I've ever done. She called us from our radio ad. She owned a house here, had owned it for years and years. It was her mom's house, and it was her house. And she had married and moved to Oklahoma. And the tenant that was in it had moved out. And when I asked her the question, I said, Lisa, why are you selling this house? And she said, I don't want to drive over there every 2 weeks and cut the grass. That was her reason.
Wow.
And I bought that house for $40,000. While I had it under contract, I listed it on the MLS and we sold it for $151,000, made $100,000 on a wholesale deal. I never touched that house. I was only over there twice.
Amazing.
But
Wow.
she sold it because she didn't want to cut the grass.
Yeah.
And then there's a guy that gave us a house with $70,000 in equity. We flipped it and sold it. He had had his hours cut back at the chicken processing plant. He had taken on a boarder, renting a room, and it was just too much. He wasn't behind on payments yet, but he just didn't want the stress of it. He was going to move in his camper and live out by the lake. And then, like I told you, Stacy, she needed a liver transplant. So, man, they're all over the map. People in foreclosure is generally just poor money management in the economy.
What makes you sell a property versus do it on terms?
It depends on a couple of things. One, if I'm taking over subject to and I'm looking at a 2.8% interest rate, and I see that I can make some long-term serious cash flow, the house is in good condition, doesn't need any work, that's going to be a keeper for me. If it needs work or if it has a tremendous amount of equity and I know I can sell it within 30 days, we might flip it. So
Sure.
those are the two factors. I don't like to fix up houses and leave money in them. So I like to seller finance houses where I've got very little money in it, no fix up, where I can be ahead from the get-go. I was at that note thing. It's where I met Nathan here, and I would listen to all these note guys just get really excited about a 25% return and things like that. And I said, man, I'm going to blow your mind, because most of the houses we buy, if I put 10 to acquire it, I'll get 20 or 30 down from my buyer. Then I'll get cash flow every month. Then I get it back in. I mean, man, that's ease all day long on that financial calculator. So that's what
Yeah.
So for those who don't know, E means error because it does not work. It does not compute anymore. So we talk a lot about in our show is creating a 70-20-10 model where you get at least 10% down. You create a first lien at 70% of the balance of the 70% of the value of the property, and then create a second lien at about 20% or whatever's remaining, and then hold that 20%, whatever it is, and sell a 70% note first lien and sell it out.
Right.
You're back into the E problem, right? There's an error because you now have cashed out completely. You have a 20% or 15%, depending on the deal, second lien that you're going to hold on for the next 30 years and make cash flow. There's so many ways of doing this to make great money for everyone in there. You'd be completely cash out. We'll pay off the sub 2 note. I know mathematically it makes no sense for do it, but in our world, that's what we do. But when we do that, it allows the investor to now go and buy more property and then have a constant cash flow. When you hear most of the people doing the sub 2 and then doing what you're doing, I find the biggest mistake they're doing is in the collateral, in the documentation. And then we've heard people not using servicers with that. What are some of the things that you teach some of the people out there of the biggest pitfalls that you're seeing in the market right now?
Well, some of the things that I see, these guys will buy houses that have absolutely zero equity or even underwater. I routinely see in Facebook groups, hey, I've got this house, it's worth 300. The borrower owes 290. There's a $30,000 entry fee, so you're underwater right away. The payment's $2,000 a month. It'll rent for $1,700 a month. Okay, yeah. Well, and I have a copy and paste. Where's the deal, right? Oh, this is an appreciation play, and I'm like, dude, you have no idea what you're talking about. But they'll snap those things up. People are all over them. Oh, man, send me more information and everything else, because they're under the impression that if somebody will give you a deed, you can make a deal out of it. My grandfather had a saying. He said, you can't polish a turd, right? And I mean, these deals, they're turds. And I've got to have equity. If I have little equity, I've got to have some extreme cash flow.
I think you're right though, because a lot of people today are playing the yield, right? The interest rate's 3. I'm gonna charge 10, and I have 1 or 2 grand of equity. It's like, well, I got plenty of cash flow. That's wonderful. But if the market changes or something happens to this borrower, you're in a bad spot.
That's what I'm saying, David. These people that are saying all this didn't. They act like they weren't alive in 2007 or 2008.
Yeah.
Chances
Yeah.
are they were in high school,
This is true.
Yeah.
and they don't know.
That's true.
Yeah. No
They
kidding.
just don't know.
Yeah.
But I was alive then. I know how something worth 400 today in the right market can be worth 275 or 300 next week.
Yeah.
It just depends.
If
And then I can't sell that house with seller financing in good conscience.
Right.
My only option is to rent it out. So if it won't cover rent and let me make some money, it's a no-go for me. That's the first
Right.
question I ask my students when they bring a deal. What will it rent for?
true. That's your backup
Because
plan.
that's plan B.
Yeah. What's your max? Is there a max where the property worth 300 and you're into for 215? Is there a max purchase price or what you're into the deal for compared to the value of the property? Do you try sticking?
I am, as far as a max purchase price, I am median sales price plus or minus 10%. Somebody calls me like around here, median sales price is going to be 350-ish. Somebody calls me with a $500,000 house, I'm out because I can't, unless they're going to sell it to me for 300, it needs 50 in rehab. That might be a flip. But as far as a whole, something to keep, no, I'm not keeping it for 6 months before I get a buyer. I'm sorry. I know how that stuff
So if that
works.
property worth 300, what's the most you'll pay with your rehab? What, 215, 30? Are you looking for 70%?
Well, listen, I swing for the fences. If that house needs a rehab, I'm going to be looking probably to buy it for 50 cents on the dollar. So I do. A certainty of profit. That's what I tell my students. That is the most important thing in anything we do. Certainty of profit.
Yeah.
That keeps you in business. If there's a question, there is no question.
Very good.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm out.
Making money at the buy is the key thing here.
That's exactly right.
Oh, so many people today. I taught someone just last week, and his purchase price all in was 81% of value of the property. And it's just
that might work on a sub 2 wrap. Okay, that might work that way, but not with a fix and flip. No, there's no way. I mean, not in the market we're in. I mean, man, we are teetering on the edge, right? We don't know which way this thing's going to go, but we've been balancing on the edge of that knife for a while. I'm waiting for the music to stop. I'm gonna have a chair. I don't know about everybody else.
I'm gonna start hoarding chairs now, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
So
save me a seat.
One of the things we talk about too is the power of networking. Your circle of people you surround yourself with. You share a little about the circle of people you spend time with, how you met them, and how do you stay connected with these people? You don't got to name names, just that idea.
My circle's pretty small. And that's for a reason. There's so much BS in what we do out here. You guys are out here. You know what I'm talking about. The people I hang out with have been investing for a long time, or they're new people who want to learn from the right people. They're not into the flash and the Lambo stuff. And hey, I'm in front of a mansion, they're not into all that stuff. They want to hear, legitimate old school people that tell you how to do it and how to stay in business. So my circle's pretty small. That's why I was down in Little Rock this past weekend. One of my best friends, he's been in the business longer than me. He's been doing it about 35 years. He runs that RIA down there. So I hang out with him. So I was down there to support him. But people that have been around that know what's going on and that teach, and it may be old school, but that's okay. Old school works and we're still around. So I'm okay with that.
Yeah. No sense getting caught up in something that would work for the next year.
Well, I mean, some things work for a short period of time and that's okay. But what I find is that old school, if that's what you want to call it, like I said, it works. People say to me, if I tell a new investor, go knock on the door, oh man, that is so, we use this LOI blaster. We blast out 1,000 offers an hour. And I'm like, okay, well, if that works for you, but that's why agents hate investors. Okay. Right. I guess it may work. I mean, but even a blind hog finds an acorn every once in a while. But I want to do stuff that's consistent, that builds rapport with people. I want to be known where I work. And when I walk in Home Depot and somebody says, hey, that's the house guy, then I know.
For sure. And that's why investors hate investors. I get some of those offers and I can tell immediately that they're bogus offers and that there's no way that this is actually going to pan out. I've been around the block enough times. I know exactly how this is going to pan out and it's not going to. That's just the bottom line.
Nathan, when you get that text, that wording in there, right?
Yeah.
No, and every time we put a house on the market, I get 100 of them, and it's always the same. I say, okay, send me an offer.
Uh-huh.
Send me an offer, and it's some crazy, stuff. And I said, why in the world would I do that?
Yeah.
Okay, it's ridiculous. But
Yeah.
So
Yeah, those things just frustrate
where
me.
do you find your borrowers for your properties? How are you doing it?
we do a couple of different things. The main thing that we do is we utilize Facebook Marketplace and Zillow. Facebook Marketplace will sell most of our stuff pretty quickly. There's a lot of people hanging out on there. Another thing you can do is work with real estate agents. Hey, Sally, I see you got a house over here on Oak Street. I've got one around the block. Have you shown it to anybody that just couldn't qualify, but they have money for a down payment? I'll be glad to pay your referral or some kind of marketing fee. They're file 13 for you. Send them to me. Mortgage broker guys, the same way. Somebody that came in, wanted to pre-qualify, couldn't qualify for a house, but they got money to put down. Signage at the house, really old school stuff. Hey, seller financing, no banks needed, and then directionals. That usually gets our stuff sold within 30 days.
So
Do you find there's a avatar for your buyers? Like, are they going to be a certain demographic or I don't know, something?
One of the things we typically will only buy a 3-bedroom minimum because we're
Yeah.
looking for families,
Sure.
and if it's a 2-bedroom and they got a kid, they have another kid, it's a different sex, they're out because the house isn't big enough. So
Yeah.
we want people that are going to stay and pay. We're looking for families in general. Most of them are families with kids. To me, that's ideal. They're looking for a specific thing, a good school district, a nice yard, a fenced yard where they can have a dog and their kids can play. We only do nice houses in nice areas. We don't do stuff in the bad part of town. If I've got to wear a flak jacket to go look at it, nobody's going to want to raise their kids there. So
Yeah.
we like stability. That's our typical avatar for a buyer.
amazing. I think
Do you see like seller finance? Is that, self-employed people? Are you seeing a lot of that kind of?
We see self-employed people that have been through a divorce. Medical
Okay.
issues are common. They
Yeah.
owed a lot of
Yeah.
medical debt, so now they can't qualify for a loan. But yeah, self-employed people are common, and I'll tell you more and more. And whether you agree with this or not, we discussed this weekend too. I see more investors now who only market to sell in Spanish.
hmm
They sell primarily to Hispanic borrowers that have
hmm
large sums to put down. They stay in the house. They take care of things. They don't want any problems, and hey, everybody deserves a good house to live in.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So, I
Yeah.
mean, like I said, we do, qualify people with a mortgage broker, just to process that. So we're Dodd-Frank compliant. We, even before I started doing that, I mean, I would make sure they made enough money. We want to see somebody that makes at least 4 times what the payment is.
that's wonderful.
We want to make sure
Yep.
that they're not, strapped. I want to make sure I've known investors over my 26 years that would put somebody in a house knowing they couldn't qualify to get the house back. In fact, I knew an investor once whose business model was to lease option, knowing they would get 90+% of the houses back. To me, that's predatory. I don't want to do business that way. I want to make somebody a homeowner, and I want to collect payments for years and years and years.
Yeah, a lot of them too are looking for that down payment. They get the down payment and run and say, okay, if I take the property back, I'll just get another down payment, right? And that can be a model. It can be someone's model. Just sometimes it feels like if that's all you're chasing, that's not the end goal. We've also heard people say, listen, they charge interest rates to refi out, which is wonderful, right? I'm more like Nathan. We're lazy investors. We want that payment come for the next 30 years, like clockwork, coming in the bank.
Right.
What kind of interest rates are you typically charging your borrowers? Does it vary? Does it change?
Well, I'll tell you what, I move the numbers around to get the kind of cash flow I want with an affordable payment. I try to make my payments no more than $100 a month or so above what the rent would be. So my interest rate, depending on how good a deal I got, might be 6.5%. This deal here that I just told you guys about, we're financing them at 7%, which is,
Mhm.
Wow.
I mean, it's not 12% or some of the things I hear some of these guys out there talking about. I mean, I want to keep this house affordable. And as long as I'm making $500 or $600 a month in cash flow, that's my target. I'm happy with that.
Yeah. We would push back, right? We always say, why do what a bank does? If the bank can give 6.5, 7, why are you offering a specialty service and only charge 7? And I think your answer is correct. You're making money, and that's all that really matters is that it works out, right?
Well,
You're
not only that, David, I'm not limited to poor credit borrowers. Let me tell you this. This is how we finance people. Their only cost is $750 closing cost. That's what our title company charges us to close the deal. There are no points. There are no fees. I know there are a lot of profit centers I'm skipping, but if I'm looking at a $300,000 house in Bella Vista, Arkansas right now, and this was a nice home, and I can get this house, for 10% down with no PMI, with no points, no fees, no junk fees, with a 1-year home warranty and $750 in closing costs, man, it behooves me with an 800 credit score to buy this house compared to any others. You know what I've seen people pay to Bank of America and Arvest and other places in closing costs? Thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
But it's a good deal for everybody. It was a good deal for my seller. He wanted out. He got out.
Yeah.
I'm going to make $100,000 on this house.
Mhm.
If they stay and pay for just 4 years, and
Mhm.
my buyer can get in without a lot of junk fees or anything else. So I think, man, that is a win-win-win.
Yeah.
That's cool. Do you ever consider selling any of those loans, or are you hanging on to every one of them?
We keep everything. If I sell or
Yeah.
finance it, I'm keeping it.
Sure.
We can always try.
But just in case.
And I'm getting older, like I said, and I want options. And our cash flow gives you options.
Yeah.
So yeah, we flip one every once in a while. We'll rehab something a couple of times a year. But I like to. We want to create.
Have you ever done hypothecations against your own notes?
I'm sorry.
Hypothecation. Have you ever used it as collateral?
I have not. I'll tell you what. I've got a ninth grade education. I understand what it is, but I like to keep my life very simple.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But all that fancy stuff, I just don't do
So
very much.
the reason I ask that question is a lot of people are attracted to it, which I understand why they're attracted to it, right? Because of the fact that they can get more money and get it out. But what I was trying to press upon there is that you don't need to do it in that fast track. William didn't get all these properties in 2000. He don't have the same inventory he did back 2000. He started small. He started easy. Over time, things happen. This isn't an overnight success. It's a
Mhm.
slow and progressive.
Tell me, man. I'm telling you, the first couple of years of being an investor, that is the most dangerous because you're making enough cash flow, but if somebody doesn't pay, then you got to cover that note, then you've lost that cash flow. I'm telling you, it's getting it dialed in. That's a trick. But if you'll just stay with it, I'm telling you, I could still be working for somebody right now. I'd still be a couple of years away from retirement, subject to them firing me at any time. I mean, man, is real estate investing risky? Maybe, but gosh, everything is, isn't it? And my worst day working for myself is so much better than the best day I ever had working for
We
somebody
used to talk
else.
about it as investing in the game. It's like playing Monopoly constantly. Do you ever want to stop playing game? No, you're still having fun.
No. Yeah.
And you get those surprises that come out of nowhere and you never could have anticipated it. That's part of the game. And you just got to roll with it and figure it out and think through the problem. Okay, so if that didn't work, so how do we make this, better?
Yeah.
Whatever the case is. How do
And
we
and
fix
what you
it?
what you said about networking earlier is so important too. If I've got a problem, something new that I haven't seen before, and I
Yeah.
surround myself with experienced people, players that have done this stuff and not the latest, I call them new ruse. The person that bought a house a year ago and now they're an expert.
Mhm.
I can just pick up the phone and call any of these guys, and chances are they've seen something like it. It can help me through whatever that problem is. So,
Yeah.
that's pretty cool.
So before Nathan
Yeah.
answers our famous last question, I want to ask you one thing that we always are curious about, and you've had the career doing it. Have you ever got your kids into this, and how did that work?
I've got two kids, and one of them is entrepreneurial. He's got cars on Turo and does some other stuff like that. And the other one told me flat out, I don't want to have anything to do with any of this. And, hey, I mean, you can have, 20 kids and every one of them's got a different personality. I don't know. It's hard to explain, but no, neither one of them do real estate. And I don't know why, because they've certainly enjoyed the fruits of it.
Yeah.
Life, other kids could only dream of, but they're just not interested. I guess it's not for everybody. But man, I took to it like a duck to water. I loved it right away. And of course, I hated my job so much, man. I might have gotten into anything, but I love real estate. It's still exciting. I love making a deal. I kind of lose interest once I've made the deal now. But yeah, no, they're not in real estate, but who knows?
Isn't that interesting? Yeah, same kind of thing.
Yeah. I'm trying. We're trying.
Just can't get them.
Yeah.
Can't get them interested. I don't know what it is. All right, so we're always curious to ask our guests, people that have been doing this for a while, and you've had some experience under your belt. Where do you see this going? What's your crystal ball for the next 12, 24 months in the market cycle, and what's happening and what you're doing? How does it all fit together?
Man, I'll tell you, we're getting close to an exit on our end. I mean, I've been doing this for 26 years, and we're getting to be that age. As far as what's going to happen in real estate, man, there was a time I could have told you, but with the government, intervening in things like stopping foreclosures during COVID and doing some stuff that they do right now, I'd say it's hard to say. I believe there's going to be a correction. There's already starting to be in several markets around the country. You got all these other people saying, "Oh no, man, this is just going to continue. There's a housing shortage. There's this and that." I know every builder around here is offering buyer incentives, $10,000 toward this, all these upgrades. I was doing real estate during the last crash. I saw all of these things. Now the government's talking about giving a $25,000 first-time home buyer credit. Remember that stuff? All of it, it's like they pulled out the playbook, man, for 2007 and 8. If I had to make a guess, I would say it's going to get bad. That's my guess. Now, what will happen? Shoot, who knows? I know this. I'll still make money because I'm watching what's going on and I'm adapting to things. So, and that's what you got to do.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know
Absolutely.
if that was a very good answer.
That was wonderful.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, that's great.
William, we're going to end the show here. Hang on for after hours. But thank you for joining us. It's been awesome pleasure to meet you and talk to you and stuff like that. And we will definitely see you again at the upcoming conferences and whatnot. Feel free to reach out to William. The information will be in the chat below with links to everything else. And ask any questions. He's an open book, as you can see. Wealth of knowledge. And thank you again, William. Appreciate you jumping on and spend some time with us.
Well, thanks, Nathan. David, I appreciate y'all having me. It was a good time.
Oh, pleasure. You bet. Thank you.